Okay, so we are, so because this conference started yesterday morning with Chris talking about work involving ice, and I closed it with a talk involving ice, we thought we would do a little mind and body experiment involving ice. So Chris is coming around passing around some ice, and we encourage you to take some and do with it as you wish. You can hold on to it, you can shove it off to someone else, you can eat it, you can do as you wish. And we're doing this because we thought that since many of the talks over the past 2 days have dealt with, in some sense, phenomenology, we thought this would be a kind of way for you to connect the sensations that you are experiencing now with some of the themes that we hope that we can sort of use to bring together our many talks. And we had this timer up because we thought, when we tried this, we thought, wow, 3 minutes is a long time to hold on to a piece of ice. So, and so one of the themes that we really noticed connecting a lot of the papers is the issue of temporality. And of course, ice makes you recognize this in particular ways because it is something that changes state, and that you really feel time passing while you hold on to it. It brings to mind sort of some of the other issues with time that we've been thinking about, the geologic, the heat versus the human, artworks as tied to historical specificity, whereas how to negotiate that in relation to ecological time. Now that you've been holding your ice for perhaps as much as 2 minutes, you might realize that it's kind of painful. And so another top theme that we were thinking of that brings many of the papers together is the theme of violence, and how the experience of violence through some of the talks that deal with violence against oppressed groups of people can be related to the violence enacted upon natural elements, upon the earth itself, and how best, as eco-critical thinkers, we can actually understand these to align with each other. And you want to say last?
One of the better things the ice does is it illustrates one of the tensions that's run through all the papers, which is the tension between the environment as symbol or allegory and the environment as matter, and the dialectic of the dynamic, which is always an interplay between them.
Agency, terrain, ecology, the materiality of a materialistic culture, cultural material, creating connection to place is something that we do at the center. So how do we draw a connection directly from here to another place? What is placeness? One of the things that we sort of thought about, came up with, is to look at this medium of agency, this thing that we've all been using, the thing that connects us all together through sound. The microphone. This is a model SMU 58 Shure microphone. It's actually the standard of the industry. It's the most popular microphone professionally in the world, created by the Shure Corporation, which was established in Chicago in 1925 by a radio company, Seymour Shore or Samuel Shore. Anyhow, they developed this cardioid microphone with this remarkable structure that makes it almost indestructible, this kind of balloon frame around here. In 1966, the first version came out, the SM58, and they've added to it over the years with different wireless systems and things that engage sort of wirelessly. And it is the most popular microphone for performers and professional installations. You can think of somebody like Roger Daltrey, The Who, swinging it around, the wired version, catching it. And this is used by almost every performer all over the world. Like I say, it's the primary agency, the medium for conveyance of a lot of popular culture. and it's made in Mexico. They have factories there and in China now, but the company is still based. Now it's in Niles, Ohio. It moved to Evanston, and now it's in Niles. That's the headquarters where it comes from. So speaking, there's connected to the place. You can go visit it. They have a little archive and a display. But it is the medium, so here's the agency.
I had no idea what he was going to say. The microphone, right, as the means by which we manifest our authorial presence in a solitary way on the stage, but also as a sort of tool by which I always feel rendered tremendously vulnerable as my voice becomes disembodied and enters the architecture, enters other bodies, and enters the larger infrastructure of recording through which conference proceedings become part of the sort of larger architecture of knowledge production. And on that note, it is also a means of re-embodiment to our electric genealogies and our electric infrastructures, right? And perhaps raises the question of our debt as a collective during this conference to the histories and genealogies that we perform. And I had more elegant words to say, but I'm out of time. Okay.
I have to go first?
No, I just will give it to you, yeah. So I have to say from my side, when I started to follow the presentation these last days, I had one thing in the back of my head. It was, yes, I find really consistent and strong way to analyze the political consequences of ecological crisis, which is done in the so-called eco-Marxism within the last few years. My problem with that was that this philosophical approach doesn't have any site for, as far as I could see, doesn't open up a entrance or a kind of site for aesthetic thinking, artistic action, and for art history, not at all. So by now, and following especially your performance, Sarah, I found one thing really interesting. I mean, if capitalism is a kind of mechanistic system, then it has usually doesn't like it if different times shapes come into the game, and to combine the different times modalities of the long-term history of nature, the somehow other structured history of human beings, the genealogy of smaller social units, and the biographies of human beings as individuals are a great spectrum to act in, and artists found many ways, that's what I learned here, to act as trickster between these different layers. And I think that could be one way which is, we could follow in doing and in thinking about. So thanks for that.
So I already did a performance today, and I feel a little bit all spent on that. One of the things that has struck me is the performance of vulnerability and the various ways that institutions often, the presence of the podium, the lights being low, it is a kind of opportunity to perform invincibility, and this breaking of the format now for all of us is asking us to perform and open up to the vulnerability that always is present when you're putting ideas to paper and you are speaking to another room of sentient embodied creatures with pulses and distractions and all of the things that make us fully present with one another. So I find myself wishing that more of the conference invited this kind of engagement so that we had an opportunity to warm up to it, but I also am glad that people are playing along, and I'm just going to let the clock run out.
Right, this is dedicated to Christopher Hoyer, and if you happen to be in the UK in the 70s and 80s, you might, if you stayed up very late, occasionally have encountered Brian Eno wafting to you through the TV, and if you'd tuned in and stayed to it, you might have encountered a wonderful little arts program called Arena. in this section. I shall be playing Melvin Bragg. Good evening. Tonight we're delighted to have Richard Serra's site-specific sculpture, Shift, with us in the studio. Shift has recently been the subject of a talk by Professor Jamie Nisbet at the Clark Institute of Arts conference on ecology, agent, terrain. We were hoping, Shift, if you might permit us to ask a few questions based on the discussion at the conference. Do you have any responses to the conversation you've experienced here this weekend? Are you, in fact, aware of the conversation? Are you a living, sentient narrative in the sense that Dylan has asked us to consider? Yes, that's fascinating. It's very funny, in fact. Though, yes, I do realize that matter resists. Although it does leave me at something of a loss on how to proceed. Yes, I take the point, and yes, I am familiar with the work of Bruno Latour. And the thematization of prosopopeia is, as a technique, a personification strategy in his wonderful, of course, dialogue, Aramis, or the use of the love of technology. Points of view. Interesting, yes. So there are many senses of damage, then. Oh, damage might not be the right word. No, yes, I understand. I understand that you wish Richard Serra well. And I understand you're in a legal gray area right now. And you don't get many visitors? But new flora and fauna collect to you. If you'll permit me one more question, is there anything you wish to ask the participants of the conference?
So I would like to start with a confession. Before coming to the Clark, I have never participated in any kind of art-related activities. But after listening to Ghana Think Tank and what we did with the buttons and all that, I got very inspired. So I would like to come. So Dylan and I have been working on some slogans that are related to a theme that has emerged in the course of the past 2 days, namely about socially engaged art history. And so I would start with my slogan, which sounds extremely nerdy. So it's called Engage with Research, Conserve Through Education. So it in many ways captures my dilemma in dealing with the kind of subject matter I have been researching, namely the cave temple sites in southwest China. So I have seen a lot of the stone deterioration in the past several years. And I also realized that I really have very little power over what exactly to do with it. And so, but I realized that I will stick with what I'm good at, namely to do research and to educate. And so that's what this slogan is essentially about. And I will now turn over to Dylan, who has definitely a lot more experience in doing this kind of things.
But not experience doing this thing in a minute and 30 seconds. So what we really were thinking about was the potential dialectic between different ways with engaging with art and ecology in relationship to Sonia's work in terms of engaging kind of as someone who works with conservation techniques as opposed to me, who's someone who sees their kind of art historical project as one that's engaged and one that kind of emerges from an activist practice. So we kind of took that dialectic, the two modes of working within art history. And so I just kind of created an image that says toward an ecologically engaged art history, and has a pen that's becoming both a flower and is also a pipeline spilling oil, of course. 25 seconds. Maybe we should also do some painfully quiet silence, and then I will do a mic drop.
Art historian,
Artist,
thinker,
colleague,
feminist,
board member,
environmentalist,
elder artist,
liberal,
perpetrator,
assistant professor,
driver,
curatorial assistant,
outsider,
ally,
program manager,
advocate,
sculptor,
father,
curator,
adjunct teacher,
commentator,
social worker,
graphic designer,
wife,
editor,
archivist,
writer,
postdoctoral scholar,
visiting artist,
queer,
cat caretaker,
poet,
painter,
collaborator,
member,
visiting faculty,
mother,
award winner,
scholar,
advisor,
academic,
performer,
editor,
daughter,
button pusher,
troublemaker,
community organizer,
observer,
documentarian,
activist,
maker,
researcher,
breaker,
gatekeeper,
illustrator,
builder,
apologist,
fellow,
interloper,
token,
collective,
MC,
professor,
cat herder,
theorist,
student,
author,
yoga aficionado,
adjunct curator,
cultural producer,
artist in residence,
interstitial bandino,
climate activist,
hacker,
managing director,
native,
founder,
architectural historian, optimist,
The God of Genesis never created rocks.
For many people, a single gem is enough to provide them with a supreme and perfect contemplation of the work of nature.
Patricia Williams writes that society must give rights away, unlock them from reification by giving them to slaves, give them to trees, give them to cows, give them to history, give them to rivers and rocks.
But if we're going to take the lithic turn seriously, maybe we should follow Tracy Emin, who recently married a rock. She says, "It means that at the moment I am not alone. Somewhere on a hill facing the sea, there is a very beautiful ancient stone, and it's not going anywhere. It will be there waiting for me. Even if there's the biggest fucking tsunami in the whole fucking world, the stone will probably still stay there."
But the greatest and most wonderful power, if this is true, is that of stones that give birth to young.
Jane Bennett says, "Stones can express themselves by hitching their wagon or allowing themselves to be hitched to other bodies."
Some rocks are alive, but not all are.
People still get stoned for good and ill.
Sous les pavés, la plage.
Rock you like a hurricane.
Ambivalence.
Fossil.
Archive.
Erosion.
History.
Architecture.
Feeling.
Biological colonization.
Sediment.
Life force.
Geological time.
Complicity.
Perspective.
Silence.
Damage.
Just a quick thanks to everybody for being so enthusiastic and timely and rigorous in your thinking today. Can I just ask you to please join me in thanking both, especially Ashton Fancy, who's really done yeoman's work today. And also Lauren Kennedy, who was, all this week was basically doing everything that we were able to do today in terms of making this so seamless. So, Lauren. You haven't heard the last of us. We're all looking forward to seeing you tonight, but Rebecca and I will be in touch very soon about the book or whatever this will become in terms of public format. Did I forget anything? Did I forget anything? Multimedia archive, yes, deliberately ephemeral piece of merchandise. But yeah, resistant to neoliberalism in its own pathetic little way. Yeah. But thank you all. See you soon.